Good evening, everyone. Tonight is Thursday, August 8th, 2013, and welcome to the Hate Live Beta Podcast, Episode 7, returning from a 3-week hiatus. Without further ado, here is your host, Darkside Phil. Thank you. Yes, much applause for the beginning of the stream. Yes, welcome, thank you. Welcome, everyone, to Hate Live, my ongoing podcast. My hair's a little screwed up. This is the first time I'm using my new digital camcorder, okay? And I'm working out the bugs. I know right now, I can tell you right now, the color is off. I can tell just looking at my computer screen, the color is a bit off. I apologize, I didn't have as much time as I wanted to adjust and work with the equipment this week. The audio is synced, that's what's good. But unfortunately, yeah, the color is a little bit off. I'm going to have to mess with it this week to see if I can get it to look a little better. Plus, I think it's lighting too. Right now, my lights are over there. I think if I move them closer, but make them dimmer, like don't use all 5 bulbs, it might affect things and make it look better. But right now, I am using my new Panasonic camcorder. Crap, what's the model? I wanted to tell you guys what the model was. The model is, hold on, the Panasonic HC-V720. It is the HC-V720 camcorder. And this camcorder is a digital camcorder, does 1080p, records to a SD, secure digital memory card, but I also was able to get it to work with my HD PVR for live streaming. And a lot of people you might be saying, well, why did you do that? You had the webcam was working out. Well, for some reason, about 2 weeks ago, the webcam did not work properly. From the past 2 weeks when I've been trying to use it, it's doing a very low, choppy frame rate. So I needed to upgrade, and everything that I saw out there was like, oh, crappy webcam, tiny lens, crappy webcam, tiny lens. And finally I said, you know what? It might be a good investment to go with a camcorder, because number one, that's a lot easier to take with me on a trip. If I'm going to do vlogs of trips and stuff that I'm going on. Incidentally, I'm going to Chicago in a few weeks, so that would be a good thing to keep with me. But number two, because I just need something better. The reason I still call this the beta podcast is because I don't feel that it's good enough to say this is the final product. I still think I'm using a new mic right now. This is the Samson Meteor mic. I'm using a new camera. Until I get the bugs worked out and everything looks and sounds how I want it to, I don't want to call this is the official podcast, all right? This is still in its development stages with different equipment and different segments and things that we're talking about. So I just want to get that out there. I apologize that it does not look, the color is off. At least the visual quality, I could tell it's very crisp video. The frame rate is excellent. It's just the colors right now that I need to get right. Once I get the colors right, I think we're going to be good to go. Okay? Okay. So, thank you for joining me tonight. Episode 7 of Hate Live. We've got a lot to talk about because it's been 3 weeks, so I got a lot of topics and things accumulated that I would like to talk about. The first and foremost, we're going to start with me reviewing what I've been working on this week and giving you guys a preview of what's coming in the next few weeks, because there's a lot of stuff coming up that I want to make you aware of, including this vacation that I just mentioned and a lot of other things with games. So I want to make that and get that clear so that you guys have a clear idea of what to expect in my schedule coming up in the next few weeks, all right? Once we're done with that, we're going to talk a little bit about gaming news. We had a Nintendo Direct broadcast this week, quite honestly, I wasn't very pleased with the information that was given out. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about sales numbers for games in Japan. Some shocking numbers this week, supposedly. But then there's going to be another small segment where I'm going to talk about the television shows that I watch and I've been enjoying recently. Because I've been talking a lot recently about how, because I'm playing so many RPGs this year, between Demon Souls, Chrono Trigger, Earthbound, and now I'm playing Tales of Exilia, I've been doing significant amount of grinding in these games. And because I've been grinding, I need to find things to do while I'm grinding at night. Because grinding is kind of relaxing, but it can also be kind of boring. So I like to watch shows, television shows, while I'm grinding. And I actually this year purchased several seasons of different shows that I've heard were good, but didn't know whether or not they were really good. And I want to talk to you about some of the ones that I've been watching, some of the ones that I'm liking the best. Some of the ones that I'm not liking, because there are a couple that I really did not like at all. They're just not my cup of tea, and I want to talk about that too. So, that's going to be a small segment, and all that's going to be part one. Then we're going to take a break, and I'm going to run some ads. When I do that here on Twitch, just stick around, but I asked if you could, disable your ad block while I take my commercial breaks. If you're watching this on YouTube, no need to worry about that because I'm going to put timestamps in the description of the video. So you can just click right on the next timestamp and skip right through this break, because unless you just want to watch my Hate Live splash screen, which you're more than welcome to do, there it is if you want to watch it. But I don't think anyone's going to want to just sit there watching this Hate Live splash screen, you know what I mean? Okay, so then in segment 2, back in the day, I'm going to reminisce about my childhood growing up as a gamer. Today we're going to talk about something near and dear to my heart, the console wars of the 16-bit era. That's right, Super Nintendo versus the Sega Genesis. And of course, there were a couple other things in there like the TurboGrafx 16. I'm going to tell you all about what it was like for the first real console war. Because previous to this era, okay, it was always like, well, there's always one system that's the latest, and it's always the best. They had the best graphics, the best games, and so you would just buy whatever was new at the time, and you know you had the best thing. Really, it was the Genesis versus Nintendo era when there was heavy debate about which console was the leader, which one was the better one, which one had the best games, which one had the best graphics, which one had the best capabilities. And there was even this big PR campaign surrounding the hoopla about this stuff. And I want to talk about it because it's, like I said, it's something I grew up in. It was a unique time. It was when games were beginning to become mainstream. Of course, nowhere near as mainstream as they are today, but they were becoming big money. And so it was a really big PR campaign put behind these consoles. And it was unique to be around at that time, and I want to talk about that, okay? And then we're going to do a final segment, which is going to be the usual live Q&A where I take questions from the stream chat. So you're going to see right now the mods have actually opened up the stream chat to a raffle system where you can submit your question, and at the third portion of the podcast, I'm going to basically enable subscriber-only mode in the chat on Twitch TV, and we're going to randomly pull questions from the raffle. So if you want a chance for your question to be answered live here on the podcast, submit it via the stream chat right now. And one last thing I want to say, for YouTube users, you're not going to give a crap, but for Twitch TV users, if you're watching this live, unfortunately today there's been lots of problems with the stream chat in particular. The stream chat seems to be delayed. So unfortunately, you may ask your question and it takes like 2 minutes to get submitted. I may ask to pull questions and it may take 2 minutes to get the questions pulled because the stream chat is massively messed up and delayed today. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on with that. But, alright. So, here we go. Segment 1 of Hate Live. After coming back for a 3-week hiatus, I'm glad to be able to come back and talk to you about what I've been up to, whether it's on YouTube or Twitch TV, so you know what's coming up. So, this past week, there were actually finally some new retail releases, okay? I like them. I actually like the releases, but unfortunately, both of the releases that came out this week are the kind of games that only appeal to like a niche audience. And when I say that, I mean one of them is a Nintendo first-party title that's a cute kind of puzzler slash strategy game called Pikmin 3. It's the first game I've played on the Wii U since Lego City Undercover months and months ago. It was a reason to dust the sucker off and plug it back in, and I have to say, Pikmin 3, I love it. Even though there are some frustrating parts where it's like trial and error for you to figure out what you need to do in certain fights, certain boss battles, certain puzzles, once you figure it out, it's actually kind of a refreshing feeling to know, oh wow, I figured it out, and that's awesome, and it's a lot of fun. And I like it's a charming game. It's cute. It's fun, but it's also brutal when you see your little poor Pikmin get eaten. So I've been playing this game since Sunday when it came out, because Nintendo, for whatever reason, in all their wisdom, likes to release their games on Sunday. You know, Sunday, the perfect day of the week, when the next day everyone goes back to school and work, so you barely have any time to play the game. Whatever, really stupid. So yeah, so I've been playing it, I've been enjoying it, okay? But my hair is just not level today. I don't know what it is. One side's like sticking up over the other. I don't know. I've been enjoying it. In addition to that, Tales of Exilia came out this Tuesday, a JRPG. And again, whenever I say RPG or JRPG, people are like, "Oh no, I hate it. It's boring. It's repetitive. It's the same thing of every fucking RPG." And to some extent, yes, that is true. They do have a lot of things in common. Yes, there is boring, repetitive combat. However, what I've been doing with Tales of Exilia is I've been playing it every night grinding so that when I play the next day, you don't have to sit there through the boring, repetitive combat. I literally am turboing through most of the combat of this game so we can get to the important story elements, because I know this game is going to be super long. All JRPGs are, okay? And a lot of people at first, I think, were afraid that I was going to drop the game like I did with Xenoblade Chronicles last week. Was it Xenoblade Chronicles? I think it was. Was that what I played last year and I dropped it? Because basically it was too long and it was all that I was playing, and people were complaining they wanted to see me play something else. Keep in mind, last year my way that I was working was I would only play one certain game a day. I wasn't playing multiple games a day so that people who didn't like what I was doing would still be entertained, okay? So I think some people were afraid that maybe I would drop this game in the middle if the views weren't great. Listen, I knew going into it the views were not going to be great, alright? I'm going to keep playing it because I really like the game. I played Tales of Vesperia, so I'm familiar with the combat engine. The first night I kind of familiarized myself with it when I was grinding, and now I'm able to do these super complex, super cancel combos. In fact, now I'm doing double, triple cancels. When I was grinding last night, I had my main character would do a big combo into a super move, cancel into a double team move, cancel into a second double team move, tag out to a different partner, and do a third double team move. So I'm mastering all these combat mechanics now. When I come back to play the game tomorrow, I'm going to really be accustomed to what's going on. I should be able to tear right through the game, okay? So if you're afraid of the game because you're like, oh no, it's a JRPG, which means there's going to be such boring combat, don't think that. I'm actually tearing ass through the game, so I definitely recommend that you check it out on YouTube if you haven't yet, and or watch the next live stream, which will be tomorrow. In fact, tonight I'm going to upload more Tales of Exilia to YouTube because I am actually way ahead of where I am on YouTube on stream, okay? So I'm playing that and I'm enjoying it, okay? In addition to that, this week I played Chrono Trigger. I'm near the end of the game. I did one stream of it on Monday where basically I did as much side content as I could. I still have about 3 more side content missions left, and then the end of the game, which is 1 more dungeon, and then and that's the final boss fight. So I could probably do it all in about 2 to 2.5 hours, and I'm hoping I can do that this weekend, and I'll let you know in my schedule what exactly I'm planning for that. So I'm juggling all 3 of those things. And then, of course, tomorrow night is going to be the conclusion of Demon's Souls. I'm at the final boss on the final stage, so all I need to do is keep playing it until I figure out his patterns and figure out how to beat him. My first attempt, I took him down to about 1/3 of his life, like, was gone, and then I died. I'm hoping I'll be able to beat it Friday, because if not, I'm not going to be spending multiple entire days trying to beat this guy, so I'm hoping I can do it, okay? Alright, so, plus, by the way, I think I had the wrong spell, or I was using the wrong spell. That's Friday. So, to give you a rough idea of what to expect over the next several days, because I know people are asking, when is Phil playing what? Now he's playing so many games that I'm so confused, I don't know when he's going back to what. So let's clarify. Tomorrow, on the first stream, which is early afternoon Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to be playing Tales of Exilia, alright? I'm going to play that until my break, which is traditionally 6:37 p.m., Then I'm going to obviously go on break, get some food. The second stream tomorrow is going to be the conclusion of Demon's Souls, if I can beat this last asshole, alright? Then, and by the way, I don't know why these people are like, hey Phil, I like your content, but why are people asking questions now? Put it in the raffle. Don't ask questions like that. I'm not looking at the chat. I'm obviously doing a podcast. Put it into the raffle, okay? Okay. Saturday. John Rambo is going to be here for a new episode of Smart Guys, our ongoing pro wrestling commentary show. And then we're going to be doing Dragon's Crown Co-op. Dragon's Crown is a game that came out this week. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up RPG similar to the Dungeons & Dragons arcade games from back in the day. People are loving it, apparently. Everyone who's bought it has told me it's great. And I saved it. I know it's a new game this week, but I saved it because I wanted to do it co-op. That's the kind of game it's meant for co-op, all right? So John and I are going to be playing it on a marathon stream on Saturday. I'm figuring we can maybe do 5 hours or so of gameplay, I hope, if not more. And that's going to be all day Saturday. Sunday, I'm going to be doing Chrono Trigger on the first stream. And then the second stream is probably going to be maybe more Pikmin, I'm thinking, because it'll be a couple days since I played Pikmin then. So Pikmin 3 that night. Then, since I'm probably going to beat Chrono Trigger on Sunday, that means Monday, again, is going to be Tales of Exilia and Pikmin. and I'm hoping by that point maybe I'll have gotten near the end of Pikmin. I don't know if that'll be the case, but I'm hoping that I'll be getting close, because Tuesday of next week we've got 2 releases. We've got DuckTales Remastered on the PlayStation 3. This is the game that I actually played at ScrewTac Gaming Convention in the Iron Man of Gaming Finals on stage and on live stream, where I epically failed, went the wrong way, didn't pick up the gems I was supposed to pick up, and ended up losing the whole tournament. So obviously, I've got some redemption coming. So I'm going to be playing that, but also I'm going to be doing the DLC, the next DLC for Injustice, which is Zatanna. Zatanna is a really cool character from the DC Universe. She was interesting because she was never like one of the main characters, but she was always a really powerful and interesting and good-looking supporting character. I guess we should mention that as well. She is quite good-looking. And yeah, so she's coming out on Tuesday. So the plan there is the first half of Tuesday is going to be Zatanna DLC. Then at 8 p.m. on Tuesday, it's the first time I'm telling anyone about this. There is this podcast, and forgive me because I don't have the email in front of me. I guess I could bring it up here. There is a podcast held by 2 gamers. They were recently on John Rambo's The Show as guests that called in. And the podcast is interesting because it's not just about a certain topic, but it covers all kinds of different gaming topics and such. And if I could find it here, I could tell you the name of the person and all that, but now I'm not even seeing it. What the hell? Son of a bitch. That's way too far back. Hold on. Because I'm going to be on this podcast, and you might be surprised because the guy, I guess, who basically is really in charge of the podcast, I can't find the fucking email now. The guy who's in charge of the podcast is actually one of my critics. You may have heard of him. His name's Kane Bringing the Pain. But the podcast is not just going to be about criticizing me. I'm sure I'm going to answer a few questions regarding some of the ongoing criticism and such that's been going on. But I am also going to be talking about an important topic, which is reviews, reviewing sites, how gamers these days are judging video games based solely off of the review that they read on some mainstream review site, and we're going to have an open discussion about that topic. And I think that I'm very informed on that topic, being that I'm an independent reviewer, and I see the attitudes that people have towards video games just because they went to IGN or they went to GameSpot and they gave it a certain, oh, what are you talking about? GameSpot gave that a 6. I'm not getting that game, but the game's really fucking good, all right? So it's going to be an interesting topic, an interesting show. I can't find this fucking email. Maybe if I look for sent. Hold on. Give me 1 second, everybody. I'm all out of sorts today for some reason. All inboxes. I can't even get to sent. I don't know how to use this stupid fucking iPhone. I have no idea how to use it. I really don't. Sent. I have no idea how to use this thing. It didn't even save anything for me. I don't know why I can't fucking find it. This is why, Phil's an Apple fanboy, and he bought. Why did he buy the iPhone? I don't even know how to fucking use this stupid thing. Look, I cannot find the email. I just talked to the guy like 2 days ago, and the email's not fucking in here. So where the fuck did it go? Look, it's not here. But I've got 1,000 spam emails and not the important email that I need. Well, anyway, I'll be on the podcast, whatever the fuck it is. I don't even know the name of it because the email's not even there. I don't know, but Tuesday of next week at 8 p.m., I'm going to be on this show. So it's going to probably last 45 minutes to an hour. So as soon as that show is over, then I'm going to start my second stream, which is probably going to be some DuckTales. Now, DuckTales is a short game, so even though I'm only going to be playing it for like 2 hours, probably one more stream and I'll end up beating it. So the bottom line is I'm going to be starting broadcasting late for my second stream on Tuesday because I'm going to be on this podcast before it. Okay? All right, so that's next week. And then, of course, next week after DuckTales. I can't believe my hair is still fucked up. After DuckTales and, is that? Hold on. That's not even the right side. It's this side that's fucked up. After DuckTales is beaten, it's basically just going to be me focusing on Tales of Exilia. I made it even worse. Tales of Exilia and Pikmin 3 until I've beaten them both, okay? And then the next week is insane. There's 100 new releases, all right? Okay, so that's the rough schedule. I made it worse. For the next few days. All right, so now I want to talk a little bit about gaming news and in particular Nintendo. Because Nintendo, they had their big, we don't have to do E3 anymore because we have our own Nintendo Direct press conference that we do once a month. First of all, I'm going to tell you my personal opinion on that. Nintendo has absolutely nothing going on that once a month they need to do a press conference. Of all the companies making games, they're the company that has the least to say, yet they think that we need to hear from them monthly. I think it's preposterous in my opinion. All right? So, coming off of E3, where Nintendo did their Nintendo Direct press conference, and basically were ranked by every media outlet. They said Nintendo did the absolute worst at E3 because number one, they weren't even fucking there, and number two, the Nintendo Direct press conference, all it proceeded in doing was announcing all the games we already knew were coming. So, the new Mario Kart, the new Smash Brothers, a new Mario 3D Land, all the shit you knew was already coming, they just officially announced it all, and they gave no release dates whatsoever for anything. So, the fucking Wii U was still sitting there as a paperweight, dusty, with no games to play on the damn thing, and the only games we even had release dates for were Pikmin 3 and Wonderful 101. And that's all we knew. So outside of those two games, we didn't know what the hell we would be playing for the rest of the year, which is why everyone basically was pissed with Nintendo during E3. So here we are a month later. Here's Nintendo's chance to make up for that, to recover a bit, and to say, all right, we didn't have enough information for you guys at E3. Here you go. Here's the release date for all those games so that you know that your purchase of the Wii U was warranted. And they did not do anything like that whatsoever. Instead, what they proceeded to do, they gave the release date for Wind Waker's HD remake. It's going to be October in Europe. That's the only information they gave. Europe. Okay, what about America? What about Japan? No, Europe. We'll announce the European release date only. So, of course, in Europe, everyone's like, all right, that's cool. You know, Wind Waker, it's a good game. It's HD now. It's coming out in October. No one else knows anything, all right? Then they said, the new Phoenix Wright and Professor Layton crossover is coming out for 3DS in 2014. Who fucking cares? We know you're developing it. We figured it was going to come out. You don't. That's a non-announcement. That's a waste of my time. All right. Then they had more information regarding the new Zelda Link to the Past sequel for the Nintendo 3DS, and they said, there's going to be a Dark Triforce, and it's going to have interesting mechanics. And okay, we know you're making the game. We don't need little details every month about plot points. When I buy the game, I'll learn that there's a Dark Triforce. You don't have to tell me about it months in advance. How about you tell me when the fuck it's coming out? How about you tell me any of the fucking Wii U games when they're coming out? And that's literally, they beat around the bush on this whole stupid press release Nintendo Direct announcement and gave no concrete information whatsoever outside of the release date for Wind Waker. So tell me, what was the point of the fucking thing? Like, why am I bothering to even, listen to these press conferences? What the fuck is Nintendo doing? Nintendo, this week I started playing Pikmin 3. You gave me hope for the Wii U because I said, here's a first-party title. It's really well done. It's charming. It's interesting. It's fun. It's something that I have a reason to dust off my Wii U for. But it's not a system seller. It's a game for a niche group of gamers who like this cutesy kind of gameplay, who like RTS. That's not mainstream stuff. That will not sell the Wii U. And this is going to lead into my next topic, which I'd actually like to talk about. Some sales numbers that were actually released this week from Japan. Now, I don't have the actual numbers in front of me. But apparently, the news that's come out of Japan is that Dragon's Crown, like I said, it's this 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up game, has really outsold Pikmin 3, which is a surprise because everyone's like, Pikmin 3, it's the first-party Nintendo title to come out since the fall for the Wii U. You would have thought everyone would have rushed to stores and bought it. No, this Dragon's Crown beat-em-up game is completely destroying sales numbers for Pikmin 3. So everyone's like, wow, we didn't expect that. But then, when you really think about it, you have to think, let's think logistics and facts here, and why would this game, that really, it's just a side-scrolling beat-em-up, I mean, it's really, honestly, kind of antiquated gameplay, why would it beat out Pikmin 3, a first-party Nintendo title? And the bottom line is this: because no one bought the Wii U. When the Wii U came out, it was one of the most piss-poor launches ever. Nintendo couldn't prove that their console was next-gen. They didn't have a very good launch lineup outside of Mario and, say, maybe one or two other games. A lot of the games that they thought were going to be system sellers, like Zombie U, were fucking awful games, okay? So Nintendo did a piss-poor job of launching their system. They've had no games really coming out that are system sellers this entire year up to now. So no one in Japan has been buying the Wii U. So when Pikmin 3 came out, everyone who had a PS3 said, oh, the summer's traditionally empty, there's no releases, let's go buy this new PS3 release, Dragon's Crown, because everyone owns a PS3 in Japan. No one bought the Wii U. So probably every Wii U owner went out and bought Pikmin 3, and the sales numbers are still low compared to Dragon's Crown. So Nintendo is completely fucked themselves over here. Like, what is going to be the game that Nintendo's going to release that's eventually going to get people to buy the Wii U? And the other question is, when the fuck are they going to tell us when the games are coming out? My personal feeling, and this is complete speculation, all right? So don't take this as fact. I think Nintendo is years away from putting these games out. I'm not even joking. I'm going to tell you, the Mario Kart, Smash Brothers, you probably won't see those till late 2014, if not 2015. But they realized if they didn't, talk about them at E3, that they would completely lose any kind of interest in their console. And they also knew that basically Microsoft was going to get slammed at E3. They knew it because of all the negativity in the press around those ridiculous design choices for the Xbox One that Microsoft later took back. And they said, let's at least put the teaser out there for these games so that people know they're coming. Even though they're not coming anytime soon, we have no information on when they'll actually be out ever. We're just going to fucking leak that information and give you the trailers and stuff for it so that at least we look positive while Microsoft is taking the kick to the balls from Sony. All right? So, I don't know what's going on. I have a Wii U. I'm playing one game on it. After this, what's the only other game coming out for Wii U this year that we have a release date for is Wonderful 101. Who the fuck wants to play that game? The game looks weird as fuck. It looks like a cross between Power Rangers and tiny little chibi characters. It looks like something that a Japanese child would like. It's not anything that, like, I would want to play. It's really, really just weird design choice and dumb. It's not attractive to me in any way, shape, or form. It's, again, another weird niche title for the Japanese audiences. They'll get it. No one else will. So that's not going to sell Wii U's, and I don't even want it. I'm not buying it. So look at the time it's coming out. It's coming out in the same month as huge games like Grand Theft Auto 5 and Rayman Legends. Why the fuck would I want to play Wonderful 101 when I have these other great choices, all right? So, I really don't give a crap. It looks really dumb. I think that it looks like a bad game. I haven't played it, but it looks bad to me. And quite frankly, I don't see what Nintendo's going to do. Why would you buy a Wii U even this fall with the new systems coming out? Why would you want a Wii U? It's a piece of shit. Alright, so I just wanted to get that off my chest, especially after watching the Nintendo press conference. I'm just like, they're so full of themselves, and they can joke, oh look, here's, what's his name, Iwata, wearing a fucking fried shrimp hat. And he's like, oh, I'm the head of the studio, and here's the guy. Like, what a fucking, you don't even take your company seriously. You're wearing fried fucking shrimp hats in a press conference instead of using the press conference to give us real information. You're just blowing smoke up our fucking ass, and I'm real disappointed with Nintendo right now. Alright. Okay. Now, the final thing I want to talk about before we take a break and then we move into my Back in the Day segment is some television shows. Television shows that I've been watching recently. Like I said, during the downtime when I've been grinding in RPGs, I found a few shows that I've liked and some shows that I haven't liked. And people ask me all the time, what are you watching? So, let me tell you. So earlier this year, I started watching Breaking Bad. And I got hooked, let me tell you. And it's surreal because I actually used to watch Malcolm in the Middle when it was new on television. So to see the main character, Bryan Cranston, who plays, the main character of Breaking Bad, he played one of the main characters of Malcolm in the Middle. What a completely different role it was. It's just so weird to see him on a completely different style of show. But the show is dark, it's gritty, but it's funny at the same time. I really like the ensemble cast that they put together for the show. I think they all do a really great job. And I'm sad to say that this is the last season. This year is the last season. I've watched seasons 1 through 5 over the past several months. I've watched them all. And I'm sad to see the show go, but I also understand what happens with a lot of these shows is they overstay their welcome. meaning because the show is popular, the story gets stretched out and stretched thin because they just want to make more money and keep the show going. So I would rather see the show end this year than have to be dragged out, and then the show ends up being overwinded, overblown, and ridiculous shit and filler happens, and it ruins it. For me, this being the final season is probably the way to end it, and I'm looking forward to it. Another show that I was turned on to, this one was due to my girlfriend, Leanna, was Dexter. I had never watched Dexter before. One thing people don't realize, I don't have cable TV. I have the basic channels, and I have like the very basic cable package, so I don't get Showtime, Cinemax, any of these, HBO. I don't get those channels that have a lot of these shows, like Dexter's on Showtime. So I haven't seen a lot of the most popular stuff over the past several years, okay? So Dexter, great, again, another one. I love the casting. They did a really good job with the casting. Some familiar faces from shows that I've seen in the past, like Oz, but other faces that are fresh faces, and everyone seems to do their job really well. So far, I've seen almost 3 full seasons of Dexter. I'm actually currently watching it with my girlfriend whenever she visits me, and we're going to be bringing it to Chicago with us for our Chicago trip coming up. And so I'm really enjoying the show. And the one thing that I've heard, though, is that Dexter, unfortunately, is one of those shows that did, unfortunately, run too long. And it was funny because I'm watching it with my girlfriend, and I'm like, okay, this is a good show. You know, and I heard that this year, again, similar to Breaking Bad, this year is the final season of Dexter. It's actually going on right now. And I said, gee, all right, you know, what, another 2-3 seasons? The show's like in season 8 or season 9. I'm not even sure. It's either 8 or 9. I was like, what? This show's been running for 8 or 9 fucking years? How could you possibly have this show go that long? And apparently from what everyone says who's been an ongoing fan of the show, yeah, the show goes off the rails. Unfortunately, they do stretch the show out way too long, and there's a couple seasons in the middle, like around 4 or 5, seasons 4 and 5, 6, where it gets really boring. And that's unfortunate when that kind of stuff happens, because again, it's a really good show. You have to know when to end it. Don't have it overstay its welcome or stretch it out for the fact that you want this, okay? So, we're going to continue to watch that. We were in the middle of season 3. I also own season 4. I'll probably be buying some more seasons. Walking Dead, absolute 100% fan of the show. The show does have drastically different things in it than what happens in the comic books, okay? And it's funny because I've been reading the comic books. I have 2 trade paperbacks that they sell, the 2 giant collections. It's like, I think the first one's like the first 40 or 45 issues, and the next one's like the next 40 or 45 issues. And I've read through the whole first one, and I've read through about half the second one, but that was months ago, and now I've forgotten what the hell I read, so I'm probably going to have to reread it. But basically, it's like several seasons of the show just in the first one. So I'm actually several seasons ahead of where they are with the TV show right now. And it's very interesting to see the changes they've made between the comic and the show. But I do really like the show. I think it's well done. And even though they do have some crazy changes between the two, it doesn't mean that it's worse or better. I just think it's different, and that's good because it keeps it fresh. As someone who's read the comics, it keeps it fresh enough for me to want to continue to watch the show. Okay? I'm trying to think what else. Oh, Sons of Anarchy. I just recently started watching Sons of Anarchy. I'm about 2 seasons in, and I just started watching the 3rd season. I'm a few episodes in. I like that show, too. I think, again, it's so different. All the shows that I'm watching are so different. You got zombie survival over here. You got a serial killer over here. You got a guy who makes meth over here. You've got, with Sons of Anarchy, a crazy thing about motorcycle gangs. And it's just such an interesting cast. It actually has Katie Seagal from Married with Children, and then she went on to be like a voice actor in lots of stuff, including Futurama. And to see her in an ongoing role that's a really important role is really good. So I'm really liking that show too. And I've been watching that. That's what I've been watching recently. And it's funny because I've been watching TNA Wrestling for years, and they've got this plot line called the Aces and Eights that's going on. And basically the Sons of Anarchy are kind of the characters that Aces and Eights were based off of. So really, TNA ripped the idea from Sons of Anarchy, which is kind of funny, okay? Some shows that I have that I didn't like. Mad Men. I tried Mad Men, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it was just because most of the characters in the show are such fucking sleazeballs, but I just don't like the show. You know what it is for me? For me to like a show, I need to find a character that I really like and attach myself to them to say, okay, that's the character who I really like and I'm going to follow along in the show. I don't think there was one character in Mad Men that I liked. They were all like just real sleazeball assholes. And I bought season 1 and I watched maybe half of it and I just got bored of it and I didn't want to watch it anymore. One show that may surprise you, Boardwalk Empire. I actually bought the whole first season and I got about 3/4 through it. And I don't know, about 3/4 through it, and it's not Steve Buscemi. I actually like Steve Buscemi's character, but I don't know. It started getting really slower moving. It became less about the actual main plot and more about this stupid side drama plot with this girl who's like his girl on the side. And it was really just, I didn't really like it that much. Outside of the first few episodes. I think Steve Buscemi is like the only really good thing about that show, if you want my honest opinion. I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, Game of Thrones. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the books. I've been reading them. I'm more than halfway through A Dance with Dragons now, so I'm almost done with all the books and caught up to speed on the books. The show, I've watched the first 2 seasons. I didn't see season 3 because I don't have HBO. So I saw the first 2 seasons. I absolutely loved them. Again, they do change certain things here and there to probably make the show more palatable. You know what I mean? So books, a lot of the times, they get so drawn out that the shows take some creative license with some of the things in the books to make it seem better and more digestive for TV. And I have noticed some of those changes, but for the most part, very close to the books, and I'm really liking it. I'm really interested to see what they're going to do in Game of Thrones when they get to the 4th book. Because here's what happened. The author of the Game of Thrones books, it's really a Song of Ice and Fire. It's not called Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones was the name of the first book in the series. But his name is George R.R. Martin. And when he sat down to write this past book, the last one that he wrote in the series, he fucked up. What he ended up doing by accident, he wrote a book that was like 2,000 pages long. And he was like, fuck, what did I do? Like, why did I write so much? And now it's too long to be one book. It's supposed to be one book, but he was forced to split the book into 2. And so book 4 in the series, which is, I think, A Feast for Crows, ended up being its own book, but it's weird because stuff's cut out of it. All right, and then the second half of what really is book 4 is contained in book 5, which is The Dance with Dragons, the one that I'm reading. But also there's all this new shit piled in. So what ends up happening is you open up book 4 and you're like, I'm gonna read about my favorite character, Tyrion Lannister. And you read the whole book, and he's not in one fucking line of it. That's right. Book 4 literally cut entire characters out of it because he cut them out of the book and put them into book 5. So book 4 contains some of the most boring storylines I've ever read in a book. What happens with the stupid Cersei? Who cares about that stupid bitch? I don't care about her. She's the one who's like the manipulative bitch who's trying to be queen. I don't care about her, alright? I want to read about my interesting characters. And there's almost none of that in book 4, alright? And book 5 has all the good stuff, but then all of a sudden, because he needed to make a full book out of book 5, and it was only half of what he cut out of book 4, he now threw in a ton of new characters who you didn't want. You're like, this series already has 57 characters. I don't need another 12. It's hard enough for me to keep up with every character in this fucking series. Stop putting new characters in the goddamn books. And that's what he did in book 5. So I have no fucking clue when they finally get to that point on the TV show what they're gonna do. I mean, they're going to have to chop up the 2 books and take fucking tape and tape it together and use gum to stick it together to make it try to be a cohesive story. Because even when you're reading the books, they're not cohesive. You'll read book 4, and then all of a sudden, book 5, shit will happen with other characters, but it's like a year before what happened in book 4. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, what? Like, I can't even... At one point, there's a guy who's on this place called The Wall, and he's the leader. He's in charge of The Wall. Then in book 5, he's not even the leader yet, but then he becomes the leader. And you're like, what? Like, what happened here? This is so confusing. I don't understand what the fuck's happening. And he really fucked it up. He really fucked it up. So I'm really interested to see how they're going to do it with the show. If anything, they may actually make the show more digestible than those books are, because it's not a mess. They'll actually rip the books apart and paste them together into the way, the order that they're supposed to happen, instead of going, this is now this is later, now this is before, but this is here, and this guy was here, and this guy was here. Oh, and by the way, behind the scenes, they intersected here. Like, I need a fucking giant diagram on my wall to figure out what the fuck's going on in this book. Alright? It's fucking stupid. Okay. So, that's my book story. The last thing that I want to talk about in this first segment, and then we're going to take a short break, I do want to make everyone aware I am going on vacation the last week of August. The last week of August, I think it's from Sunday to Saturday, although really we'll only be there for 5 days, the 5 middle days. I'm going to Chicago on vacation with my girlfriend Panda Lee. We've got a whole schedule planned out of fun stuff. This camcorder, it's part of the reason why I bought this camcorder, is so that I can easily walk around Chicago and film stuff and not have to be holding the camera. The camcorder is a lot easier because it's lighter, has a strap, etc., etc. But yeah, so that's coming up. And what's going to happen is the week before that is like gaming overload. The week before that, you've got Saints Row 4, Splinter Cell Blacklist, and the Bureau XCOM Declassified. What I'm going to have to do is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 4 days, I got to go hard fucking core into gaming. And what I mean is, like, I got to play the hell out of those games, whether it means extended streams, whether it means playing way more than I usually do. I'm going to have to do it for 2 reasons. The first being, when I get back from vacation, we've got Killer is Dead, which is a game made by the same people who made Deadly Premonition that have come out already, so I'm already going to be behind on that. And we've got Rayman Legends. So we're going to be super jam-packed with games till the end of the year now, so I'm going to have to really buckle down those 4 days and play the hell out of those 4 games. Number 2, obviously if I'm going to be gone for a week, I'd like to have surplus footage of those games saved up, so that I can have that automatically be uploaded and published to DSP Gaming while I'm gone. Not that you have a whole week where there's new games, everyone's fiending for new footage, and there's nothing because I'm on vacation. So I'm going to be playing the hell out of those games when they come out for 4 days in a row, which literally might mean I may be canceling 1 day of co-op with John Rambo to do it. I may be whatever I'm doing on Fridays by that point, because I'll probably already have beaten Demon's Souls, that's probably going to be canceled. And this podcast for that week is probably not going to happen because I'm going to need to be playing those games, okay? So, that's the deal coming up. I wanted to make everyone aware. I will be on vacation the final week of August. More details on that coming, okay? All right, everyone, so now we're going to take a short break. If you're watching this on Twitch TV, please just stick around. In about 3, 4, 5 minutes, I'll be back, and we're going to be doing my Back in the Day segment. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to look at the timestamp at the bottom of the video. Give it a click. You'll jump right through the commercial break, right to the next part of the podcast. So thanks a lot, everybody. I'll see you in a few minutes for Back in the Day. Don't go anywhere. It's going to be good. Making faces at the camera. Okay, everybody, what is up? I am back, and welcome to the second segment for Hate Live episode beta podcast, episode 7. The Back in the Day segment. This is a lot of people's favorite part about it, so let's get into it. I fixed my hair, by the way. Well, now it looks flat. Whatever. Okay. Back in the day. What we're going to talk about today is a time near and dear to my heart. The time when I really fell in love with video games on consoles for the very first time. The 16-bit wars. So let me give you some background, alright? Console gaming up to this certain point, which is about, I'd say the 1990, 1991, 92 point. Console gaming had always been about having the newest and best system, okay? Because literally what would happen is one company would put out one system. Oh, here's the Atari 2600. Then the next company would put out the next system. Oh, here's the whatever the hell it was. And there was a series of systems that came out during the 80s and into the early 90s where everyone was always the best, the best, the best, the best. And I think it had actually ended with like the Sega Master System, and then it was followed by like the regular Nintendo. Don't quote me on that, because that was the kind of period when I wasn't heavily into the consoles. But basically, at the time, Nintendo was the market leader with the Nintendo Entertainment System. And so here come the late 80s, early 90s, and all of a sudden Sega says, well, guess what? We're kicking it up a notch. We're going to release something that's going to knock your socks off, something that's going to be so much better than the Nintendo, because it's twice as good. That's right. It's a 16-bit, not an 8-bit system. We're going to call it the Sega Master System, I believe they called it, over in like Europe and other places, and they called it the Sega Genesis in the United States. So, the Sega Genesis, I'm going to be referring to it as the Genesis for the purposes of this Back in the Day segment, because that's what it was called for me, okay? The Sega Genesis was interesting, because unlike other game consoles, it really did try things a little differently. It looked different, first of all. If you've ever seen the look of the original Genesis, and I apologize because I could have taken it out of my closet, but right now it's hooked up with the fucking mushroom top Sega CD and fucking stupid, 32X in it, so I didn't bother with it. But the original Genesis, it was not as wide or chunky as a lot of the other systems of the time were, but it was a sleek black design with a cool kind of rounded top and a way to put your cartridge in. Even the controller, the way it was contoured, it wasn't like a blocky thing. It was a nice rounded, contoured controller, and the look, it looked really sleek. Let's put it that way. It looked sharp. That's the word I'm looking for. It looked sharp. It was an attractive system. To have that in your living room, that thing looked really cool. Okay, so when it came out, a lot of people just off the point of how it looked said, "Oh, I got to get it because it looks so different from all the other game systems that have come out," and they ran out and they bought it. All right. Now, what's interesting to know is that when the Sega Genesis came out, it did not launch with like the massive amount of games that ended up being famous lines of games for the Genesis. In fact, it kind of had a little bit of a rocky start. And I remember the Genesis being out, and a lot of people had heard that, oh, well, Nintendo's also working on a 16-bit system. I think we're going to wait. We're going to wait it out, and we're not going to buy the Genesis, because I actually heard that the Super Nintendo was coming out. And actually, I was one of those people. I owned the Super Nintendo before I ever got the Sega Genesis. I was kind of a late adopter of these home gaming consoles. Like I said, I didn't get the Nintendo until like just before the Super Nintendo was coming out, okay? So, it was popular. People who had it, not everyone had the Genesis. A lot of people didn't make the gamble or the jump. And of course, if you're a kid, can't afford it. It's up to your parents if they buy it for you or not. And I didn't have the Genesis. I didn't even want it. I didn't hear about any great games or anything on it that I really wanted. Not to say that there weren't, because we're going to talk about some of the great ones for the Genesis coming up. But at the time, I just didn't see the reason to own a Sega Genesis. So then the Super Nintendo came out. When the Super Nintendo came out, now I knew Mario, okay? I knew Mario, so I was like, Mario, yeah, of course, I'm going to get the Super Nintendo. And then I heard Final Fantasy II was going to be coming out for it. Now remember, I told you in my previous Back in the Day from a few Hate Lives back that for Final Fantasy, I had seen my cousin play Final Fantasy 1, and I knew it was a really good game, but I had never played it, so I was really interested to play Final Fantasy 2. And so that was one of the major buying points for me why I bought a Super Nintendo, is because I wanted to play Final Fantasy 2. And I remember you know, at the time, buying the system and playing Super Mario World on the day I got it, it fucking blew me the fuck away. It was the most complex game I'd ever played. It was long. The amazing colors and graphics and the new capabilities of the Super NES, where you could have like the layer upon layer upon layer of graphics, which they couldn't do back on the Nintendo. The sound. That's the other thing. The Super Nintendo had the most advanced sound system at the time, all right? So, better graphics and better sound than anything I'd ever seen before, and it blew me the hell away. I loved it. I absolutely loved the Super NES when it came out, okay? Of course, also the controller, and this is funny because I've been playing Chrono Trigger, so I have a USB Super Nintendo controller, but what an intuitive controller that Nintendo said, listen, we realize that games are going to the next generation, and in the next generation they're going to become more complex. You're going to need more buttons. You can't just have 2 or 3 buttons anymore. So they retained the familiar select and start, the classic style D-pad, and the A and B buttons, but they added 2 more buttons plus 2 shoulder buttons. So this really opened up the gaming, just the landscape for game developers to say we can do so many different things with these different buttons now. Thank goodness Nintendo put 6 buttons on their controller. Now, let's compare this at the time with the Sega Genesis, which had come out first before the Super Nintendo. The Genesis controller only had 3 buttons. Now, they had thought that they were innovating when they did that because the regular Nintendo Entertainment System controller only had 2 buttons. So they're thinking, oh, we're going to up them one by adding 1. And then Nintendo completely trumped Sega by adding 3 more buttons to their controller, okay? This totally opened up the world to new games like Street Fighter. When Street Fighter 2 came out, it's a 6-button fighter. Every person could play it day one, no problems, on the Super Nintendo, while on the Sega Genesis, unless you went out and purchased an additional 6-button controller, you had to play with only 3 buttons. And the way that they did it, if you could believe it, you had to press the start button to alternate between punches and kicks. So sometimes you do a jump in, roundhouse kick, press the start button, press a punch, press the start button, and then do a special move with kick. It was super convoluted and extremely hard to do. So the controller was a major innovation for the Super NES, okay? So, you would think, all right, okay, well, we're just going to follow along the same lines and say, well, whatever's the newest console is the best and that's the one you need. But that's not what happened during the 16-bit era. What ended up happening was one of the most bloody and brutal console wars ever between the 2 major competitors, okay? And so much so that other consoles that had come out and had planned to compete with these 2 guys got kind of swallowed up in the mix. So what ended up happening was you had this major mascot for Nintendo. His name was Mario. And you had some other iconic first-party series like The Legend of Zelda and things like that. And so you had like these spokespeople for the company, these characters that sold games. And Sega said, oh shit, we really don't have that. You know, we have good games, but they're not like breakout characters where people are going to say this is like the mascot. So, incidentally, they started making them. And of course, the biggest one out of all of them was Sonic the Hedgehog. So really, the battle was Mario versus Sonic. The plumber versus the super fast hedgehog. So even though Sega had come out earlier, had an inferior controller, and in actuality, the processing power, the graphical engine, and the sound card in the Sega Genesis were technically inferior to the Super NES, Sega decided to do one of the most ingenious marketing spins ever. They created this character called Sonic the Hedgehog, whose gimmick was that he was super fast. They created a game that moved faster than any other game ever seen previously, alright? Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, back then, of course today, every game's like fucking lightning fast and everything can move because of the graphical capabilities, but back then, a game like Sonic, to see the screens move as fast as they were when he was running at full speed through the stages and doing these crazy loop-to-loops was unheard of. It was unheard of. No one had ever seen things like this before. So even though maybe the graphics weren't as good as a Super Nintendo game, maybe the sound wasn't as good, you go, whoa, look at how blazingly fast this guy's moving through this game. And so Sega realized they were onto something. And so, basically, what they were saying was, factually people were saying the Super Nintendo has better specs than the Sega Genesis. So what Genesis went ahead and did, Sega, what they went ahead and did, they created this PR campaign. Massive amount of advertising on television and in magazines, namely gaming magazines. And what they did is they tried to show that their system, even though it was inferior technically, was a better system. And they literally invented a technical term that doesn't exist, but no one knew that at the time, called blast processing. Okay? They said that the Sega Genesis, despite it being an older unit, was able to process things faster than the Super Nintendo, and that's why you were able to make a super fast game like Sonic the Hedgehog with no slowdown. Okay? At the time, what was actually happening was that a lot of game developers were developing for the Super NES, and what they were finding is when there was a lot of things on the screen at once, that it would slow down. There would be lag and slow down in the gameplay. And a lot of people were complaining about, why is the game slowing down like that? I don't understand. So Sega was basically saying, oh, our games don't have that. Look at Sonic. Look how fast he moves and how many things are on the screen at once, and it goes super fast. And they called it blast processing. But they never, ever explained what it was. Is it a better chip? Is it better software? Is it better, just better engineering, better game development? And the reason they never explained it is because it didn't exist. It was literally just a PR campaign from the marketing department. But you saw it everywhere. Buy the Sega Genesis with blast processing. It was on TV. We've got blast processing. They had a slogan. Genesis does what Nintendo don't. So basically saying, the Nintendo can't handle this kind of speed, can't handle this many characters on the screen at once. We can, because we have blast processing. And it was funny, because you would go to school, and there would be the kids that had the Super NES and the kids that had the Genesis. Most people didn't have enough money to have both. A lot of people didn't have anything. And so when you had one, you knew you probably weren't ever going to get the other, and so you kind of had this pride and you had to stick behind it. Almost a gang mentality. No, the Super Nintendo's better. No, the Sega Genesis is better. Why is the Genesis better? Because it's got blast processing. When it didn't mean anything. It was a fluff term. And it was so funny to see these two groups of people kind of go at it and kind of attack each other. All right? Now, each system, in its own merits, had an exceptional lineup of games over the lifespan of these consoles. The Sega Genesis, even though it was graphically and with sound inferior to the Super NES, I mean, it had the Sonic the Hedgehog series, it had the Streets of Rage series, it had a lot of the RPGs that never saw the Super NES, like the Phantasy Star series. You had classics like Toe Jam and Earl. So the Sega Genesis had a lot of really high quality games. So by no means am I saying negative things about the Genesis. In fact, I played Sonic. It was funny. My dentist, of all people, my dentist actually had a Sega Genesis in their office for the kids to play while they waited to go in. And that was when I first played the Genesis. And I remember playing Sonic the Hedgehog and Eco the Dolphin on it. And I was like, wow, you know, these games are really good. This Hedgehog's fucking fast. This kind of stuff I don't do on my Super Nintendo. That is true. The Sega Genesis has faster moving games than the Super Nintendo. And I remember playing Eco. And Eco I didn't particularly like too much. But it was Sonic, and I said, you know what, I want it. And eventually, now we're talking late into the lifespan of the Genesis, I did get a Sega Genesis. And one of my favorite games of all time, and I'll stand to this, forever, is that I think that Sonic the Hedgehog Part 2 is one of the best video games ever made. You know, I know that I've had my gaming bucket list, and I say that these are the games for Super Nintendo that I want to play on YouTube and Twitch and, you know, on the internet before I ever retire from doing this, and they're all Super Nintendo games, but that's because I had the Super Nintendo longer. But Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is an exceptional game, and I love that game, and I played the hell out of that game. I found all the secrets for that game. So, excuse me. So, the Super Nintendo, on the other hand, had all of their first-party huge successes. So you had every Mario game, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. You had Mario Kart, a brand new series that started. Games like Super Mario RPG, Earthbound, Contra, or not, it wasn't Contra, it was called Contra 3, which showed off some of the amazing graphical capabilities of the system that couldn't be done before the Super Nintendo. Super Castlevania. Every game was super, basically. Super bases loaded, super this, super that. Every game had this thing super. Similarly to how later on with the Nintendo 64, everything was whatever 64, Mario 64, Mario Kart 64. So everything was 64, 64. Well, at that point, it was super, 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 super. Every game. Super Star Wars they had. So in its own right, the Super Nintendo had its own really good library of games. Plus, there were still developers like Square Enix who were quite honestly developing only for Nintendo. And they really loved Nintendo, and they had a really good relationship with Nintendo at the time. Actually, back then, I take it back. They were just Square Soft back then. That was before they merged with Enix and they became Square Enix. So, over the course of these two consoles' lives, very heated rivalry. Like I said, you would see ads in magazines where they ripped each other a new asshole. I remember there was one ad, right, where the Genesis, because remember I told you how sleek and nice looking the Genesis looked. It was a very sexy console versus how the Super Nintendo, when it came out, was kind of blocky and gray. They actually had in one ad, it was so funny, it was like a toy box, all right? And it showed a kid, and he was like playing the Sega Genesis with blast processing, and it was super fast, and there was like smoke coming out of the TV because it was so hot. And then the other kid, I guess he had a Super Nintendo, and he walks up with it, he goes, "You want to play a game?" And the kid's playing the Sega Genesis, he's like, "I don't want to play with that child's toy. Go put it over there." And the kid took the Super Nintendo and he slammed it in the toy box, like destroying it. Like, boom, fuck this piece of garbage. Boom. I was like, wow, like, what an ad campaign they ran. Seriously. What an ad campaign. It blew my mind. So, over the course of the lifespans of these consoles, both consoles had some really good games. However, it did become startlingly apparent when, for the very first time, okay, certain games were ported that were cross-platform. And when it was the dawn of cross-platform games being published for two consoles at once, and they're supposed to be the same game, but what you found was there were startlingly apparent differences, all right? Where this really came into play primarily was fighting games. When Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat came out for both the Super Nintendo and the Genesis, you saw the major difference between them. So, first of all, Street Fighter 2 came out on the Super Nintendo and was not released for the Sega Genesis. They never released it for the Genesis. Probably because the Genesis at that point, they couldn't even figure out how to make a game that looked and sounded so great run on their system. So there was a big disappointment for Genesis owners. Are you kidding me? Why is it only coming out for Super Nintendo? So then there was this announcement, oh, don't worry. So Street Fighter 2 isn't coming out for the Genesis, but since there's a new version out in arcades called Champion Edition, you're going to get Champion Edition, and it's going to be better than the Super Nintendo version because it has more characters, it's going to have more colors, and all this stuff. So people were like, okay, so we wait a little bit longer, we're going to get the better version of the game. Unfortunately, while that game was being developed, they also announced, oh, guess what? The new version of Street Fighter just came out in arcades called Hyper Fighting. It's the third version of Street Fighter 2, and the Super Nintendo's getting that. To which everyone who owned a Genesis was like, what the fuck, that's bullshit. Why do we get the older version? Because you took so long to develop the game. So then, yes, again, we're still going here. So then it was announced, oh, well, don't worry. When it comes out for the Genesis as the Special Championship Edition, it's also going to have the mode where you can play it just like Hyper Fighting in the arcades. It's going to have that speed and the additional changes. We're just calling it the old thing because that's what it started as when we were developing it. So it was this big development nightmare. When the two games came out, they came out almost at the same time. The Genesis version looked and played like shit. It looked terrible compared to the Super Nintendo version. The music, some of the music was like bloop, 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 bloop. It really sounded like someone was in a tin can in the closet and was flushing down a toilet playing the themes to Street Fighter. That's how bad the sound effects and the fucking music were in Special Championship Edition for the Genesis. Then Hyper Fighting came out for Super Nintendo. It was amazing. The graphics were beautiful, full-colored, looked very similar to the arcade. The music was dead on to the arcade, and people were like, what happened here? And that was the first of a line of games where people realized, yeah, it really is true. The claim that the Super Nintendo is a more powerful system was true all along, and Sega was full of shit when they were talking about their blast processing. Now, the funny thing that happened was that, this is really funny, even though Sega had the inferior version of certain games, kids ended up buying them for the Genesis over the Super Nintendo. Why? Because of blood. You may be saying, what does that mean? Well, what ended up happening was in the mid-90s, there was this kind of movement with Nintendo to try to make their games more family-friendly. Now, how are you going to make Mortal Kombat and Primal Rage family-friendly? These are violent, gory games. People are ripping arms off bodies and fucking Primal Rage, they're pissing and shitting on each other. So how are you going to get around that to make games more family-friendly? They censored them. So even though the Super Nintendo versions of Mortal Kombat and Primal Rage were very close to the arcade versions. The graphics were better, the sound was better, the gameplay was actually better and more dead on to the arcade. They were censored. There was no blood. It was sweat, if you can believe it, how disgusting that is. It was sweat. Some of the fatalities and moves were changed. Like there was a fatality in Primal Rage where this gorilla pisses on you. They took it out of the game. So really they were inferior versions of the games in that regard. But just because people heard that, they kind of boycotted the Super Nintendo versions, and most people bought the games for Sega Genesis where they had the blood and they had all the fatalities and the gore. So it's funny because here's definitive proof. 2 screenshots. One looks like shit. One looks great, but this one has blood, so I'm buying this one. Just for blood. Just for blood, they bought that version. It was so weird. So this went on and on and on, okay? And then finally, as the consoles were getting, they were going into their final hour, and it looked like, no one knew what was going to happen with these consoles because they were getting outdated at this point. New technologies were being developed around. What ended up happening was this. Nintendo made a deal with Sony to develop a disk drive add-on for the Super Nintendo and or a disk drive standalone that would be their next console, okay? For whatever reason, Nintendo decided not to follow through. They started everything. Sony was on the same page. They wanted to develop a game console running on CDs, but Nintendo backed out at some point, all right? Sega caught wind of this and said, oh shit, we need to do something because Nintendo is developing a CD-based system, so we gotta trump them. So, in all their lame-brainedness, Sega decided to rush into development a CD-based system called Sega CD that, when released, was insanely overpriced, was an add-on to the Sega Genesis. That's right, you had to actually own the Sega Genesis for your Sega CD to work. You had to, like, plug it into it. And the Sega CD had shit games. They had this whole line. Now, if you're a fan of my videos, you've already seen. You could go watch any of the Tom Zito line of full motion video games. They hired this guy to make like 10 full motion video games for the system and say, oh, this is the future of gaming. We'll have real people and real actors acting out inside of it. And this is the future of technology and gaming, and you're going to love this. And they rushed this out. And people were like, what the fuck is this? And some people, it's funny, because remember, like I said, it was like this split group of people, because some people had the Super Nintendo, and some people had the Sega Genesis, and the people that had the Genesis were so defensive, they were like, oh no, everything Sega does is correct, we have blast processing, we're the best. So when the Sega CD came out, they rushed to stores and bought it, and were like, what the fuck am I playing? Like, what is this? This is a game? This doesn't even feel like a game. It feels like an interactive piece of shit movie with bad acting. And that's literally what it was. And then the few good games there were for Sega CD were hard to find. So outside of, like, Sonic CD, there were a few, like, Snatcher was supposedly this really good JRPG-style kind of noir investigation game. No one could fucking find it. And the game ended up being worth thousands of dollars later on because it had such a low production run. So really, most of the stuff for Sega CD ended up being crap. Nintendo could have taken advantage of this and put out a good CD-based system, but as I said, they backed out of their deal with Sony and decided they knew better than everyone else. So their next console was going to be a cartridge-based console again. Now, all the game developers kind of went up in arms and said, now, Nintendo, listen. The reason that everyone's pushing for CD-based technology is because we want to take advantage of the storage space on a CD, okay? CDs are technology that can store like 10 times more than any cartridge can. And the production cost of making CDs is like ridiculously small compared to how much it costs to make a cartridge. So we want to make CD-based games. And Nintendo completely ignored the third-party developers and said, listen, we're the market leader. We know better than you. We're the innovators, not you. So we're going to make another console that's cartridge-based. Too bad. And what ended up happening, it was the biggest flub in that decade of gaming, was that the third-party companies, instead of saying, all right, well, we understand, we'll make cartridge-based games, a lot of them said, fuck you, Nintendo. No, we're going to the newest thing, and you can stay in the past. And so they went on with Sony behind the scenes, and ended up Sony put out the PlayStation 1. That's right, they actually took the unit that they were designing for Nintendo and they turned it into their own console, which completely launched the next generation of gaming for console gamers. So really, this whole elitist attitude that Nintendo had completely backfired in their face, because a lot of the third-party developers, for example, Square, who exclusively had been making the Final Fantasy games for Nintendo, completely dropped the company and went with Sony. And just because they had the latest technology, Sony literally got a giant boost from having a CD-based technology. All these major third-party companies, Capcom, Square, all went over to Sony, and Sony got the one-up on Nintendo. And that was really the beginning of the decline of Nintendo, where they weren't, for the NES and the Super NES, they were the best, they were tops. And then because of the dumb, elitist decision they made with the Nintendo 64, thinking they knew better than everyone else, they completely flubbed it. And then that's how Sony started getting momentum. And unfortunately, Sega, boy did Sega fuck up. So after the Sega CD came out, right, they said, well, we still, oh no, we got to make a reason for people to keep buying our systems. We already got now the Nintendo 64 coming out. There's a PlayStation 1 coming out. Quick, do something else. So they said, oh wait, they announced that the PlayStation 1 is going to be 32 bits. Guess what? We've got the Sega 32X, this giant mushroom-shaped attachment for the Genesis that when you plug it in the top, now the system's really 32-bit. And this was the point where people started saying, now wait a minute. What are you talking about? First of all, who cares about bits? What is this number? 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit, 64-bit, suck my cock bit. Like, I don't care how many bits a system is. You have to have good games. And this is what ended up happening. 32X came out. They had Knuckles Chaotix, the one good game for it, and every other game for it was an utter piece of shit. Just horrible, hashed-together games, a lot of which didn't even take advantage of the supposed added processing power of the 32X, and it just failed miserably. So what you ended up having with Sega was this giant, monstrous tower of shit peripherals that you had no good games for anymore, except for your original Genesis games, and Sega really fucked it up. So then what they ended up doing was trying to push forward and catch up, and they released the Sega Saturn, but by the time that they got into the CD-based game, the PlayStation was already way ahead of them, and they just said, they died. That was really the end of the Sega's market share of consoles, and it's a shame because Sega later on actually released a really good console called the Sega Dreamcast that actually was the best console at the time. It had arcade perfect ports of fighting games and other things, and it was the only console to have them, but because Sega flubbed so bad in the 90s, no one really took their word for it, and in America at least, the Dreamcast was a flop, didn't do very well sales-wise, and ended up pretty much after only a 2 or 3 year run fading into obscurity. So it's funny how these two Goliaths, these two giant companies who were really the two market leaders, went head to head, and then eventually when they decided to make their next generation console pushes, completely destroyed themselves and literally pushed themselves into the lower echelon while Sony came out on top for quite some time. The PlayStation 1, the PlayStation 2, they were the dominators of the consoles in the late 90s and, the first half of the 2000s. And it wasn't until, Xbox and Microsoft jumped out with the lead with the Xbox 360 much later that things kind of changed for Sony. But now it looks like we may have another flip where the PS4 is probably going to be the most popular console of this next console generation. So Sony may be in the lead again. So it's pretty crazy. It's pretty interesting to talk about it. And growing up in that whole time, seeing it all transpire and not knowing where consoles were. Are you kidding me? When I was a kid, I never thought that I would ever see another console that wasn't Sega or Nintendo. Those guys were so ahead of everyone else. Like, there were other companies like the TurboGrafx 16 and stuff, but they didn't hold a candle to these guys. I thought for sure those two would always be the market leaders, and now here we are in 2013. Sega doesn't even make consoles anymore, and Nintendo's got a fucking console over there that has no games for it because they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Like, how things changed in 20 years, it's pretty crazy. Okay, everybody. So that's it for my Back in the Day segment for Hate Live. I'm now going to take a short break. Again, if you're on Twitch, please hang in there for a few minutes. We'll be right back with the live Q&A, which reminds me, you got to submit your questions. Right now is your last chance, if you're watching this on Twitch, to submit your questions to the raffle, so put them in right now, okay? If you're watching this on YouTube, you can skip the break by going to the timestamp in the description of the video. Just click, you'll skip right ahead to the next portion. So thanks a lot. I'll be back in just a few minutes with the live Q&A and the conclusion of Hate Live. See you in a few minutes. Okay, alright, so this is the third and final segment for episode 7 of the Hate Live Beta podcast. This is going to be Q&A with the stream chat. So, what I'd like to do is if the mods could please turn the stream chat into subscriber-only mode, and if we can begin to draw questions, I would appreciate that. I do realize that the stream chat is lagged, so everyone, if I'm stuck here waiting for a minute, please be patient. Unfortunately, I can't really control it. I'm hoping that the stuff will get pulled in a relatively short amount of time. So let's see here. All right, we just went subscriber only mode. That's a good sign. All right. So the first question of the night is, why don't you go back and play some 3DS games with the 3DS capture device? That question is from Twitch is my TV. All right, so some people have been expressing interest in me playing 3DS games. Apparently, it just came to light recently from a few more popular gaming YouTubers that they now sell this Nintendo 3DS capture device that apparently you can do direct capture, live streaming, and or playthroughs of Nintendo 3DS games. And that people are asking, do I have interest in it? Would I consider doing it? Especially with some of the newer games coming out this year, including the new Zelda sequel to Link to the Past that's coming out. And people are interested, all right? Number one, I think that actually is awesome that they have a capture device that you can do this. And obviously anyone who's doing that, that's an innovative idea. That's something that not a lot of people are doing, and that's a great opportunity, okay? What I have to really respond to is I don't know much about it. I did see, a video of one guy holding it, doing it, and it sure looks cumbersome to me, man. It looks like you need to have a bunch of, a wire coming out of this thing. All right, so first of all, you need the power cable always plugged in. You need the wire. Where's the AV? Well, you can't see the AV out right now because I got this case on it. But there's an AV out somewhere on here. You'd have to have that hooked up to it. Then I would have to have, while I'm holding this like this, I'd have to have wires running across my living room to my capture device, but also I'd have to figure out some way to wear headphones so I could actually hear the audio of the game. And then obviously everything would be straightforward from there. What I would say is this. Is it 100% out of the question? Absolutely not. Obviously, I've got all the equipment I need to do direct capture live streaming. All right. The only thing I would need to do is purchase whatever this supposed capture device is to do this for the Nintendo 3DS. The reason I'm reluctant to do it at this point is a couple reasons. Number one, it's another piece of equipment, just another piece of equipment I'll be buying on top of all the other stuff I bought this year, and I don't know how often I'd use it. Unlike, say, the HD PVR, unlike all the headphones, the microphone, the camcorder that I'm going to be using all the time, how many games come out for the 3DS that I'm really going to be playing and that people are going to want to see a playthrough of? Probably this year you think, okay, maybe there'll be the new Zelda game. Maybe there'll be one or two. Like next year I could definitely say probably Phoenix Wright with Professor Layton. People would want to see me play something like that. But how often, honestly, will I be using it? And I don't know if it's worth it to try to adapt to this whole new setup when I don't know if it's going to be worthwhile to do it. In addition to that, okay, the big reason I'm not really thinking about it right now is simply because starting in 2 weeks, literally in 2 weeks, until the end of the year, we are going to be basically inundated with games. You've got 3 major games coming out in 2 weeks. The week after that, you've got a major game. The week after that, you've got a major game. The week after that, I think maybe a bye week, but with this, all the other stuff that had come out, you got to catch up on it. The week after that, we've got Grand Theft Auto 5. That's going to take up a massive amount of time. I can tell you that right now. Heading into October, every week there's a major game release. And then we're going to wonder, when are the new consoles coming out? So it almost looks like from now until the end of the year, there may not be time to even do this. Like, if I'm going to play Zelda on the 3DS, it may have to be like at night, off camera, while I'm relaxing, because I'm going to have so much other stuff to do during the day when I'm working. How are you going to also do commentary with Zelda and all that? I don't know if I'd be able to even fit it. So that's the other reason why I'm reluctant. I'm not saying 100% no. I'm saying right now, until we get a better view of the landscape of games that are coming out for the rest of the year, and we do get solid release dates for the new consoles and for whatever Nintendo games are coming out and for everything, I can't really answer if I'm interested in it yet. I would love to do it eventually, but I don't know if it's going to be worth it, and I don't know if there's really going to be opportunity to even play those games, okay? Okay. So let's go ahead and draw a second question from the stream, please. Oh boy, we just got 3 questions here. The first one is from Spyfowl. Well, actually, you know what? We'll do the second one first because it's an idiot. From Xeon Steel, he says, "You have just been trolled, DSP." Wow. You're just such an amazing personality, and I thank you so much for bestowing your intelligence upon my stream and my podcast, because you definitely got me in a profound, hurtful way, and I will just not be able to go on. Oh, you got me. In fact, I quit. I quit the internet. I'm done. This guy trolled me on the stream. I can't put... I'm done. I quit. No more playthroughs. It's over. Everyone, that's it. Turn the camera off. Turn it off. It's over. Oh my god, what a fucking idiot. Seriously, what a fucking idiot. Alright, anyway. Real question. This one is from Spyfowl. And Spyfowl asks, I'm going to a university in a year. What tips would you give to survive? Ooh, university tips, eh? Alright, well, I have some profound insight on university and or college per se, simply because my run in college was not exactly the most squeaky clean stint, let's put it that way. The first piece of advice that I have to give you is don't eat the cafeteria food every day. You will become overweight. The food is disgusting in most cases. Now, this is in the year 2000, what I'm speaking about, so 13 years ago. Maybe since that time, now they have all these new healthy alternative meals or whatever, and so things have dramatically changed. But when I was in college, the food was fucking gross. It was like a cafeteria. You go in there, oh, you can get fries, mac and cheese, a burger, a hot dog, some beans, and then they did have a salad bar. So, okay, if you want to have a salad every day, but they had very few healthy alternatives that you could eat. And so what ended up happening is you would either eat this bad, fatty food every day, or you would go out and you would go eat fast food. And it's just bad for you, all right? I highly recommend you find a way to eat more healthy foods than what they offer you at college, unless your college has changed and maybe you guys have a healthy options diet plan, then by all means do that, okay? Number 2, understand 2 things. This is the first opportunity for you to be your own adult. Previously in your life, most people who, before they go to college, you've lived with your parents, you had to live under their roof by their rules, all right? And now it's like, wow, freedom. I could do whatever I want. As long as I basically don't get arrested and kicked out of university, I can do, whatever I want. And to some extent that's true, but understand this is your first opportunity to prove that you can be a mature adult and you can make intelligent, good decisions. So what that means is that you go to class and you don't skip every fucking class because you're in college and you want to blow your parents' money or the scholarship you're on or with the financial aid or whatever the hell it is. You actually go to class. You actually do pay attention in class. You do apply yourself and try to learn the lessons that are being taught there. You realize that there is a balance between work and play, and I want to emphasize that as well. It doesn't mean that you're there to only do schoolwork. You actually the whole part of the college experience and living on campus is this is your first time to interact with other individuals of your same age without supervision. So you can finally make friends outside of the cliques and bullshit that were in high school. You can actually have relationships and associations with people. And some people meet people in college who end up getting married. They end up being lifetime long friends. They end up being business associates in the future. College is a cool place for you to branch out and be social. All right? So you need to mix the seriousness of the schoolwork and applying yourself to the academia side of it with the social aspect. Do not focus too much on one or the other. If you're all about the social stuff and all you're doing is going to parties and smoking pot and drinking and doing all this shit and you blow off all your schoolwork, you blew it. But I'm going to tell you the flip side of this that you never hear. If you only focus on the schoolwork and all you do is care, and you don't have friends, and you isolate yourself, and you're kind of to yourself because you're all you're there is do is study, and you never let back, and you never let your hair down, and you never party a little bit and try to have fun and try to do social interactions, you did it wrong too, because that's what college is supposed to be, the unique combination of both to make the Triforce of success. I don't know what I'm doing with my hands. Yes, the triangle of truth has been attained at university. Where did that come from? Okay, so that's my best advice. Don't do too much of either one, because if you do too much of either one, that's when you blow it. For me, I blew it in regards of the first semester that I was there, all right, I was doing exceptionally well at my classes, but I also partied too much. And because I partied too much, it got me caught out in a situation where I got in trouble for underage drinking. And basically, I was there on partial scholarship. And the dean, I had a private meeting with the dean of the school, who basically told me, listen, we caught you with enough liquor that basically we could expel you right now if we want. So the bottom line is, we're going to be nice to you, because we also looked at your grades, and your grades are exceptional. So obviously, it's not that you're partying and ignoring your studies, but we can't have you doing this stuff because it's not allowed on campus. So we're giving you a pass, but if we ever catch you on campus again in one of these situations with beer or whatever, you're basically expelled and you lose your scholarship. And I said, I don't think I'm going to be living on campus anymore, because I am not going to, by one means, take a chance where they may catch me with a beer in my hand and then they take away all my shit. So what I ended up having to do is, after that first semester, I was crazy. I had straight A's, straight A grades, but I decided to move away and actually live with my parents and commute back and forth to college, because I didn't want to take the chance of getting expelled and losing my scholarship. It really kind of ruined the college experience for me, because there were kids who were there, who were social, who were partying, who were my friends, and I ended up not really hanging out with them anymore because I overdid it that first semester. So that's what I mean. You have to balance it. Don't make the mistake I made, and just because you're doing so well in your academics that you also party every night and you end up getting caught out and getting in trouble, that's not going to help you at all. All right? Okay. Next question, please, if we can draw. Oh, here we go. This is from Beautiful Joe 111. I made a very sharp role-playing game starring you, John Rambo, and Panda Lee. Would you play it? That's like 1,000 things to say there. What's it on? Is it on PC? Is it actually on a console? What kind of RPG is it? I mean, if it's funny, I'd like to take a look at it. I'm not saying I'm going to do a playthrough of it, but if it's a fan-made thing, I'd like to take a look at it. All right. Next question, please. There we go. The Dragon Slayer asks this. He says, if Metal Gear Solid 5 released this year and before the VGAs of 2013, who do you think would win? Metal Gear Solid 5, Grand Theft Auto 5, BioShock Infinite, The Last of Us, or Watch Dogs for Game of the Year? And of course, I have to say, unfortunately, you have completely missed the biggest, most entertaining hit of the year, the amazing indie smash, Mount Your Friends. I mean, how did you not Mount Your Friends? Didn't you watch the stream this past Saturday? Mount Your Friends. Nothing's going to beat that. I mean, I thought when I played Amazing Frog that Amazing Frog was going to be the game of the year. But Mount Your Friends is the most epic game, the most groundbreaking, innovative gameplay. I mean, just the graphical design and the physics engine on the meat spinning alone gives it into the upper echelon of gaming greatness. I mean, that game blew my mind. No matter what, Mount Your Friends, game of the year. Okay. Next question. From Metakara Kata. He asks, what cons are you planning on traveling to for the rest of this year and then 2014? Okay, good question. Very good question. And the answer to that question, incidentally, is for this year, probably none. We've already gone to Screw Tank Gaming Convention this year, okay? And, you know, we were looking over some others that we may or may not attend. And There was one that I think was the Escapist is doing a convention at some point, and we were considering that possibly. There were one or two others that I was looking at, but really this year, I'll be honest, I've already traveled to. If you think about this, in April, I went to New York City, New Jersey for WrestleMania. In May, I went to. I'm actually counting on my hands. I don't know why I don't have it on camera. In May, I went to Philadelphia for a week. In July, in June, we went to SGC in Texas. And now at the end of this month, I'm going to Chicago. I've already traveled like crazy, and I'm going to be honest, I spent a shitload of money this year on travel. Even though most of it's going to be a tax write-off next year because I made videos during the whole time on these trips, I don't know, honestly, if I can afford to keep traveling. Because the thing is what people don't realize. Yes, I will get it back on my taxes. All right, I won't have to pay those taxes next year, but there's a couple factors you have to factor in here. Number one, I am making less money now than I did, so I don't know how much of this really is going to count as a tax write-off because I don't know how much I'm going to make and how much I'm going to owe in taxes next year. Number two, I have to front the money, so I actually have to buy the plane tickets, reserve and pay for the hotel, the food, and all the travel arrangements myself, and then next year I just don't pay that money in taxes, but I still have to have the money up front to spend. And right now, I'll be honest, I'm starting to get stretched thin when it comes to this kind of stuff. I'm not going to have as much money as I had on a monthly basis last year, so it's getting hard for me to do this stuff every month. So honestly, looking at everything going on this year, the only one that there is a slight chance, a tiny chance I may go to is New York Comic Con. If I do attend that one, it's only going to be for a day. It'll be like me, Rambo, and OJ hanging out there. But OJ will probably be selling stuff with Carol Ann, his girlfriend, and we'll probably be hanging out at their booth, similar like we did a few years ago. That might happen, but I'm not promising that. I don't know when. I didn't even look into the dates of when it is yet. It might be a time that's crazy busy with releases and I can't go anyway. All right. The next convention we're seriously considering is MagFest of 2014. It is early 2014, and the actual registration to get a vendor table opens up, I believe, this weekend. I'm glad that people brought this up because I have to double check it. I believe it's this weekend. And if that's the case, if it is this weekend, what I need to do is reserve the vendor table right away. Because if I do and I get us a vendor table, I don't really care if we get the panel or not. Last year we were all disappointed because we couldn't get the panel. I really don't care because I'll be honest, right now, I'm not working on Project 7 anymore. I really don't have, I got the podcast and I got the live streaming going on, but I also really don't have too much going on in the regard of stuff to talk about at a panel. So even if we don't get the panel, I don't think I would be as disappointed as I was last year. If we have the vendor table, at least we have somewhere where we can hang out, we can meet and greet with fans. John, especially too, can show off his new stuff with Sean's Man a Hole Punch, and I think that would be cool. So I'm going to try to get a vendor table for MagFest. If we get the vendor table, I think we're pretty much a lock for going, but I don't want to promise anything yet, simply because I don't know what's going to happen. All right? But that's really what we're talking about for conventions. Next year, maybe we'll be aiming to do some more. We'll have to see. But more on that, obviously, as it approaches. It's also going to depend on what happens with my contract renegotiation with Machinima. That's coming up at the end of this year. Am I going to be moving next year? I don't know. So more on that as it approaches. All right? One or two more questions, and then we're going to probably end this up. I'll finish this up. All right? Next question was from Champ of Chaps 21. And he asks, will you play any sports games this year? The answer is probably not. Outside of WWE 2K14, if you consider that a sports game. People loved seeing me play Madden and seeing me play FIFA a couple years ago, but I'd rather play other stuff. I really, honestly, and it's coming down to the point where I'm going to just really, even if it's a new releases I'm not interested in, I'm going to skip them. And, sports games, they're just pretty much the same every year. I really don't have any desire to play Madden or FIFA or any of that. And I'm just not feeling it. So if at one point I get a craving to play them again, I maybe will, but I just don't feel like playing them. They don't interest me that much. Okay? All right. Next question. Please, can we pull one? However, there may be some racing games with the new consoles. Just to show off their new graphical capabilities, I may be playing some of the racing games. Okay? All right, this one is from, what does it say? Spectacular Scarlet Spider. That's a fucking mouthful. And he asks, what Killer Instinct character is your favorite to play as? Let's see. So back when I played Killer Instinct, my favorite character in the first game was by far Riptor. I really liked him. I liked it because he was a cool dinosaur kind of a dude. Although, unfortunately, Riptor was not one of the better characters in the game. I also like TJ Combo. I used to like Chief Thunder. I never really liked Jago. I never really liked Orchid, Fulgore, fuck, the skeleton. I can't even remember his name right now. So a lot of those characters didn't appeal to me. Glacius, I did like Glacius. I thought he was tricky because he had a couple tricks where you could do like moves that crossed you up and stuff. And then in Killer Instinct 2, I think I liked Saberwolf the most. Saberwolf was my favorite character in Killer Instinct 2. Although I did play with other characters as well, I think Saberwolf was my favorite. Okay. Alright, let's do one or two more questions and then we're going to wrap it up for tonight, everybody. Let's go ahead and pull another question, please, mods. Here we go. Alright, we pulled two more, so these will probably be the last two of the night. If Moobot ever decides to draw them. Here we go. Alright. From Zadrunas, he asks, what is your favorite fruit juice? I guess the answer to that is really dependent upon what meal we're talking. Because if it's dinner, for dinner I like apple juice and I like grape juice. Now, not the white grape juice, but the regular, like, purple grape juice. For breakfast, I prefer orange juice, but I also do sometimes like grapefruit juice. To just drink casually, I don't know if I would actually even just drink juice like that casually for whatever reason. I don't know. I usually only drink that real fruit juice with dinner. If I'm drinking casually, usually I'm drinking water, or I might be drinking an energy drink or a coffee drink or something like that. Or iced tea. Iced tea I'm also a big fan of. So, alright. We have a question here from Pack180 Splash. He says, will you consider doing a week of WWE games where you play SmackDown vs. Raw and the SmackDown series on PS2? The answer there is no, because no one would watch it, and I really don't care about it anyway. Alright, we'll answer one more question, because that one was a really quick answer. Let's pull one more, guys. One more question. 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 I don't know what I'm doing. Alright, this question is from KH Knight, and he says, since the Demon Souls stream is going to be short, do you only have about 30 minutes of gameplay left? That's what you think. It's going to take me hours to beat that boss. Have you considered starting a new playthrough of the same stream? Like Jak 2. It's a game that is guaranteed to take you rage, more than Demon Souls, in fact, and rage equals views. First of all, the whole rage equals views thing is very controversial. A lot of people love to just fucking complain about my videos and say that I rage too much and they don't want to see that anymore, even though I've done it since day one. I don't know why. Okay, well, Phil's been making videos since 2008. It's 2013. Let's ask him to see that the videos that he's made for 5 years, if he'll just suddenly up and change himself completely and become a different person. Yes, starting tomorrow, when I play games, I'm going to be calm. And I'm going to sit here like this. I'm going to say, oh, look, there's a happy little skeleton. Oh, well, instant death, that's okay. I like to replay half the game, and I like everything in this game. It's so much fun. Oops, I fell off a cliff and died. Now I have to replay 45 minutes of gameplay. That's perfectly fine, because that's what the game developers like to do, and it's a happy little game. Yes, that's how I'm going to make gameplay videos from now on. What the fuck is wrong with people? But anyway, if I do beat Demon Souls tomorrow relatively quickly, I'll probably try to find something to squeeze in there. It depends on how long it takes me to beat Demon Souls, basically. Maybe I'll squeeze in a little bit of Chrono Trigger. Maybe I'll squeeze in a little bit of Pikmin. Maybe I'll squeeze in a little bit of Street Fighter. You never know what I'm going to do. What the fuck? You never know what I'm going to do when I finish a stream early. What am I doing? Oh my god. I think it's getting late and I'm getting giddy and tired because I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Here, jazz hands on the stream. I don't know what's happening. The show's breaking down. I'm losing control. The podcast is killing me. All right, I do want one more serious question. Let's pull one more question. This will be the final question, and then we'll end it tonight with Hate Live. Let's see what the question is. Damn, I held that for a while. Okay. The question is from Blackwing88, and he says, will you play the game Terra Rising, an MMORPG on the PC? A resounding absolutely not. And then there was actually a second question that accidentally got pulled. It's from Benoit is Back, and he says, is there going to be another drinking game? I don't think you want another drinking game, because the bottom line is, if you actually played the first drinking game correctly, you'd be dead. Alright? So, I challenge you to play the first drinking game correctly before you ask me for a second one, because you didn't do it yet. No one has done it yet. No one. Okay. That's it, everyone, for Hate Live, Beta Podcast Episode 7. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll join me tomorrow, the continuation of Tales of Exilia, and also the conclusion of Demon Souls. Obviously, Dragon's Crown Saturday. All the new content coming up over the next week. It's going to be really fun and very varied. That's the other thing. We've got literally 4 to 5 games I'm going to be playing in the next few days. And it's going to be pretty nuts, but it's going to be pretty fun as well. Thank you for joining me, whether it was here on Twitch TV live on stream, whether it's on YouTube on the King of Hate Vlogs. Thank you for putting up with the off color scheme today. What I'm going to have to do is, like I said, really tweak the settings here and see if I can get this camera to film with better color adjustments. I think that I've been looking and the frame rates actually looked really good. It's actually just the color adjustments that are looking off. And I think that once I tweak this to the point where the colors look good, maybe we can finally call this the official podcast and not just the beta podcast. But for now, I'm DSP, signing off for Hate Live. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. I'll see you tomorrow. And by the way, I just think I still have to upload some Tales of Exilia tonight after I upload this to YouTube. I got a busy night ahead of me. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night. Peace out.